Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. And today we are finishing up our college football conference preview series that we've done with the Big Ten. We've already done the SEC. Go check that out. We've done the Big 12. The ACC is going to be released by the time you're hearing this. Tyson, we're finishing off with another big boy, and that's the Big Ten, the three-time defending national champion Big Ten conference. And they are gearing up to make it 4 in a row because, man, they got a lot of good teams in this conference, that's for sure.
Yeah, we started with the big boy SEC. We're ending with the reigning champ, big boy in the Big Ten, and we had some snooze fest in the middle here. So Brad and I are excited to finally get back to, there's more than one team in this conference that we think can win a national championship, and that's exciting.
Absolutely. And so if this is your first time joining us, that we've tiered the conference into 4 separate tiers. Our first is the favorites, who we think are the teams who should win or likely will win this conference. Then we go to our contenders tier, kind of like the dark horses as Tyson described them. If everything goes right, they can win the conference. Then we have our middle of the pack, teams we think will just be fighting for the middle of everything in the conference. Then, of course, the bottom feeders, somebody's got to be at the bottom. We think these teams are going to be those representatives this season. Tyson, we got a lot to get to in the Big Ten. Let's start it off here in the favorites with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Coming off a 12-2 season, they went 9-0 in conference last year, lost to Indiana in the title game of the Big Ten, couldn't make it back-to-back championships. However, they're looking strong on paper with Ryan Day going to his 9th season here. I mean, a ridiculous 82-12 record here. Arthur Smith taking over as offensive coordinator. I think we'll maybe have some thoughts on there. Matt Patricia back as the defensive coordinator. Julian Sayin back as the quarterback. 3,600 yards, 77% completion percentage last year. 32 touchdowns, 8 picks. Bo Jackson, the freshman, is going to be back for his sophomore campaign. He went for over 1,000 yards with 6 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, of course, leading the wide receiver core. And then Brandon Ennis, just one of those talented guys, of course, stepping right in off the factory line as it is. Chris Henry Jr., another 5-star talent high school player. He could make some noise his freshman season. Tyson, I think if you're an Ohio State fan, you're going to want to hear these numbers because 70.1% of their offensive yards are back, which is 10th in the nation. And that is huge when you consider how much normally they have to replace. 34.5% of their tackles are back, which is 82nd in the nation. 92 offensive line starts are back. That's 22nd in the nation. All 8 of their offensive returning starters are homegrown. 4 defensive returning starters, 6 of them if you include the transfer portal, but they have the 6th toughest schedule. So there's a lot to unpack here with the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, and 6th toughest schedule by, part of it is by way of the fact that they're in the Big Ten and they catch a lot of these really good teams also in the Big Ten this year. There's some non-con games that we could talk about too, but I think the down argument could be somebody looking at this and going, well, Caleb Downs is gone and Arvell Reese is gone and Sonny Styles is gone. And how many times have we seen this movie? That Ohio State is just going to have another dude step up, and he's probably going to – a couple of them are going to go in the top 15 of the NFL draft a year from now. Arthur Smith, I think, would be like the big thing here. How is this going to translate? Brad, some of the stuff that we hated about this guy in the NFL was like, hey, man, just use your best players. Like, enough of Tyler Algier. Let's get the ball to Bijan. Enough of some of this stuff. Is that really even that much of a factor here at a place that is just putting out crazy talent? Now we can argue that maybe it won't be ideal for the passing game. How much is Ohio State going to even have to score to win some of these games this year? This defense was disgusting a year ago, and the cupboard is not bare. I know I listed some guys that went pro, but that's not really a concern to me. I think Ohio State is up there for the most talented team in the Big Ten and the country. And I think that, Ryan Day got the monkey off his back a couple of years ago, and now we can kind of look at this guy like, hey, man, he's trying to add rings to his legacy here instead of a Ryan Day can never win the big one. He can't win the big game. Now I think it's, hey, let's run it up.
I'm a little bit more concerned about this defense than you seem to be. I mean, you lose a ton of talent. Yes, you can replace Tyson. I mean, man, it's different between a 21, 22-year-old who's gone in the first 2 rounds and a 5-star kid who's 18, 19 years old. So I think they're still
agree, but they got James Smith from Bama. They got Rousseau. They got like Devin Sanchez and Jermaine Matthews are going to be locked down on the corner spots. Like, it's not all 5 stars. Like, they dipped into some really, really good transfer players too.
They did, and that's what Ohio State does well. Of course, they don't just recruit at a high level. They bring in transfers to plug their holes as needed. Matt Patricia, Tyson, I think proved a lot of people wrong last season, but we'll see. The way people are talking about Caleb Downs coming out of Ohio State is like, this dude solved a lot of problems for the Ohio State defense because he's just so smart and so good. We'll see what happens here. I mean, the thing about Matt Patricia, Tyson, is he got a ton of talent to work with, and that works well in his scheme. And closing kind of thoughts on Arthur Smith, I have no clue how this is going to look. Ryan Day's like, well, we've proven that coaches who've come in with their tendencies can change here at Ohio State. Well, is Arthur Smith going to change? Because if not, we're getting a lot of two tight end sets, and fans are going to be like, why the hell are we not throwing the football down the field with this quarterback and these wide receivers? So we'll see. It sounds good on paper. Well, we can coast our way into the playoff. Tyson, they tried to do that last year, and they got to the playoff, and they were unprepared. I mean, they got bodied. Yeah. So we'll see. The offensive line, I think, is a big thing as well. But Ohio State, super talented. They should be competing for a national championship. They should be competing for a national championship every season. They have been doing it under Ryan Day, but like you said, after he got his monkey off the back with that title, he's ready to add another one. And I think this team is certainly prepared to do that based on the talent that they have on this roster. Let's move on to Oregon and your guy, Dan Lanning, because that's somebody here, Tyson. This team, I'll put it here right now, and we'll dive into everything. They need to win the title this year. This year. This is his fifth season. They are 48-8 under Dan Lanning since he's arrived in Eugene. I mean, it's insane. They only lose to national champions. Like, that's the whole thing that's going around the past few years. Man, Dante Moore is back after spurning the NFL, which is something that if I told you 10 years ago, you'd be like, what are you talking about? That just didn't happen, especially we can go 2 overall.
They got a couple guys, dude.
Insane talent on defense. But Tyson, this is your guy. You said you think when Dan Lanning, like a couple years ago when we did this, he's the best coach in the conference. I said, I think Ryan Day probably is, as much as I don't like him. Do you agree with my assessment, or is that a little too aggressive that he has to win right now?
Oh, I guess I agree. I think that this is the year that Oregon should win a national championship. That's what I would say. I don't know if he has to, because I don't think he's going anywhere if they win 11 games and lose in the second round of the playoffs. But at the same time, it's like, we talk about Texas Tech spends a bunch of money and Ohio State has this insane budget. Oregon just has this slew of money coming in, and we don't actually know how much it is, but it's more than everybody else. I can promise you that the amount of money that Oregon has dumped into this program would be, I'm going to go, it's higher than pretty much anybody's throwing out right now with the Phil Knight bag that's been poured into this program. You mentioned Dante Moore spurning the NFL. Dude, so did Bear Alexander and Amari Washington and like half the freaking defense. Like, this team, there is enough to Oregon, to me, walks into this season as like, this is what we've been building for. Like, there is too much talent across the board. We've seen in the last couple of years Oregon bring in transfers that other schools were salivating over, and Mekhi Hughes doesn't even play. Like, that's how deep this team is. And I think that Dan Lanning is still kind of finding that balance here of like, I'm going to be an asshole and we're going to get the guys ready to go. And it's going to be, we're going to go punch somebody in the face and saying all of that, but then actually doing it in the giant moments, because there's been some pretty huge games that Oregon has won. And then there's been some moments, playoff games specifically, where you look back and you go, oh man, they didn't really get off the bus. Like, you can do the thumbs down and all of that stuff. And it's great when you're playing Michigan and they're down. But then when you're playing, you got to go play Georgia or whatever this year, let's say, to get to a national championship game. Dan Lanning hasn't showed me that he's built for that win. I think Oregon could absolutely win the Big Ten. He's shown me that he can win the Big Ten. I don't know if he can walk in and win a national championship, and that's the box he has to check off, I think, to truly move to this elite status that, I was a little premature with putting him at.
Well, Tyson, 2 years ago, they get their ass beat by Ohio State in that rematch. I mean, it wasn't even competitive. It was over after the first pass, pretty much. I mean, that was a complete ass beating that Ohio State put on Oregon. And then the rematch last year, Indiana went into Eugene, beat them. Everybody's like, okay, well, now Oregon's going to be able to take Indiana this time. We're not really sold in it. Indiana beat the shit out of them. I mean, just wasn't competitive. And those are the two big games that you're looking at. It's like, okay, well, those are national champions. Yeah, but you're Oregon. You have all this talent. Tyson, we're going to go through some stats here. Before I do, we're talking about talent that left this program. They're starting, like, defensive tackles are starting at Notre Dame and Alabama, and people like the players we got from Oregon are like our best players. That's how much talent they have there. And it's a lot of that due is the financial success that they've had and the financial reasons through NIL and stuff. So if Dan Lanning doesn't win here, I think we're going to have to start questioning, like, is he the next guy who can he get the monkey off his back? You know, like we were doing with Ryan Day. It's like, come on, dude. Like, you have all this talent. If you're really as good as you say you are, then you got to start winning here. But Tyson, if they're going to do it, I think it's going to be this season. 66.8% of their offensive yards are back. That's 18th in the country. 54.2% of their tackles are back. That's 16th. 51 offensive line starts. That's 71st in the country. I'm not too concerned about that based on the reports coming out of Oregon is that, yeah, the guys they're bringing in are really good. 6 other offensive returning starters are homegrown. 8 returning defensive starters, 9 if you include the transfer portal. They have the 20th toughest schedule. This team is poised to make a run. I have them winning the national championship. I think they put it all together. I think Oregon's going to win the championship. It's going to make it 4 for 4 for the Big Ten.
Well, I mean, if you just look through the regular season, there is absolutely no reason why Oregon shouldn't be at least fighting for a bye. Like, the thing they're not going to be favored in is on the road at Ohio State. They're going to walk into every other game, health, assuming health. Like if Dante Moore goes down, we have a whole different conversation.
Right.
But like we're sitting here in the middle of August, this team will be the underdog precisely one time this season.
Let's move into the defending national champion Indiana Hoosiers, which is something that I don't even think anybody would have thought they would have uttered in this modern era of college football. 16-0 last year, incredible. 9-0, of course, in conference as they win the Big Ten. Signetti, a ridiculous 27-2 here going into his 3rd season. I mean, just an insane turnaround. The big storyline that kept both their coordinators, Shanahan on offense, Bryant Haynes on defense, Josh Hoover, they're bringing over from TCU. A couple barbs traded between Curt Signetti and Sonny Dykes about Josh Hoover coming over to Indiana. We'll see what happens there. Signetti raving about what he's seen for Hoover. They bring in Nick Marsh, Michigan State transfer at wide receiver. Turbo Richard coming over from Boston College to replace a running back that they had a couple years ago, or the past 2 years. Returning production, just 13.5% of their offense is back, which is 118th in the nation. Again, I just went through some of the transfers they had to supplement that. 48.4% of their tackles are back. That's 37th in the nation. 119 offensive line starts back, which is huge for them. That's 8th in the nation. 4 offensive returning starters, 8 if you include the transfers. 6 defensive returning starters, 9 if you include their transfers, and the 24th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. Tyson, everybody is wondering, can Indiana do it again, or is this a mirage past 2 years? What do you think about what we see with the Hoosiers this year?
I'm not doubting this guy, man. We don't do that here. Like after 2 years ago, it was like, can Indiana do it again? Darth Vader's on the sideline. What did they do? They were better. They showed up and were better. Brad, we talk a lot about, well, this running back group might be the best in the country returning. This wide receiver room might be the best in the country. Look at the secondary as we've gone through all the Power 4 conferences. Indiana's returning offensive line is probably, in my opinion, the most important group that's returning in college football. That was one of the biggest advantages that they held over everyone a year ago. And you just said they have 119 of these starters. I know there were big losses along that offensive line. I also know they backfilled. And I think that Charlie B, your boy, Charlie Becker, can kind of take that next step. This is a guy who was kind of buried a little, like it was Sarad, it was Omar Cooper, and then it was playoff Charlie B, and it was back shoulder, and Mendoza was great. That's the question mark. Is Josh Hoover the guy that's going to turn the ball over too much for Indiana to go win another one? Because that's their secret sauce, man. We win the turnover battle, we control the time of possession, and you can't score on us. And if Josh Hoover's turning the ball over, that's one of the 3 key pieces of the machine.
I saw him last year in person when he played at Arizona State. He's listed at 6'2". Looks smaller than that. And so I was like, man, what's that going to be like going from Mendoza, who's like that prototypical size at quarterback, to a guy who just looks a little bit small. He's stocky, though. Super big arm talent. Signetti says he's more talented overall than Mendoza. And I think if you've watched Josh Hoover, the throws that he makes, that shouldn't be surprising. But it's reining them in. Mendoza, this is Signetti's words, the best preparer that he's ever been around when it comes to football from the quarterback position. And that was his superpower. We'll see if Hoover can translate that, because he's going to have a defense, he's going to have an offense, but he's going to have to play to the Indiana standard, or else Signetti's going to get after his ass a little bit. We know he's not afraid to do that. So I just want to push this out here.
And I think one big thing here for Indiana. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say they catch Ohio State and USC in Bloomington, and I think that those are pretty massive things here as we look at only two of these teams can play in the conference championship game, Brad, and so the schedule is going to be pretty massive amongst these favorites.
I agree. And I was just going to put a bow on this because I didn't mention this. These three teams are really closely grouped together when it comes to the Big Ten. Indiana plus 300 to win the Big Ten according to FanDuel Sportsbook. If you're looking at Ohio State, they are the favorites at plus 180. Then Oregon, the second favorites at plus 270. So there is a big three in the minds of FanDuel when it comes to this conference. And I don't think a lot of people would disagree because, Tyson, as we move into the contenders tier here, we're going to start with USC. And we did a hot seat episode before we started doing the previews. We mentioned Lincoln Riley, is the seat going to start getting hotter if he doesn't start performing better? Listen, this is his fifth season. He's 35-18. They went 9-4 last year, 7-2 in conference. Improved a little bit, but it was still like, man, I don't know. You're just kind of missing something. Jaden Maeva's back. He threw for 3,700 yards last year with 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. You get Wayman Jordan and King Miller back on the running back who combined for about 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. 63.8% of their offensive yards are back. That's 21st in the country. 57.9% of their tackles are back. That's 13th in the country. 81 offensive line starts are back. That's 36th in the country. So this team has experience, has returners, plus they get a stacked recruiting class that's coming in, which should be able to help now with the 5-for-5 rule that the NCAA implemented. 8 returning offensive starters, 9 if you include their transfers, 5 defensive returning starters, 8 if you include their transfers. However, Tyson, according to Phil Steele, they have the third toughest schedule in the country. And if you look at it, boy, this thing is not anything to sneeze at.
No, and it's young kids that are going to have to step in because we can talk about Jaden Maeva. He's awesome. But now you have to replace Mekhi Lemon and Jacob Lane. And when you're doing it with freshmen, that's a tall task with the schedule the way that it is, because there's no 2 off weeks in a row for the USC Trojans this year if you look at the schedule. I will say we do I have an all names list in my head. USC has a freshman receiver coming in, Boobie Feaster, and I think that guy is going into the All-Name Hall of Fame for me. But I think that is a pretty massive concern here. Brad, you didn't even really dive into who's coaching the defense here for the USC Trojans. Are you not excited for Mr. Gary Patterson?
I think it'll be fun, Tyson. It'll be nice to see him, but is the game passed him by? This thing kind of fell off the rails a little bit when he was coaching as the head coach, and he's supposed to be the defensive specialist. TCU kind of fell apart. He's been, as an analyst, he's been hanging around, Tyson. He hasn't been coaching. Now he's going to step into USC when Lincoln Riley needs to perform, and now he's going to be running the defense after the guy that they brought in to fix the defense and did so on the surface, Danton Lynn, who we'll talk about here next or coming up. I have major question marks about this defense. What do you?
But the I might have cut out.
I got you now.
Okay, just for the Lincoln Riley tenure, what we've grown to expect at USC is there's going to be a little bit more flash than there is substance, and there's nothing here that is telling me that all of these shiny things that are drawing our attention away from the fact that the defense has sucked the whole time. And you can score 40 points, and that's great, but they're losing some of these games, and I don't think that changes.
Listen to this stretch here. Host Oregon, host Washington, at Penn State, bye, at Wisconsin, host Ohio State coming off a bye, at Indiana's coming off a bye, then you host Maryland, and then at UCLA in a rivalry game. That is a gauntlet of a stretch there, and USC is going to have to navigate it by going coastal, leaving time zones, which Lincoln Riley's not very good at. If they can win 9 games, Tyson, I think that's a win for USC, to be completely honest with you. I mean, man, I have no clue how it's going to go here for the Trojans. Let's
really quickly.
Yeah,
I think that leads into with the expanded playoff. We could potentially be starting to look at like the FCS model, where does a USC with this schedule with 9 wins have a better resume than somebody else who finishes with 10 or 11? That's a question that we're going to have to answer at some point. And as the playoffs keep growing, these are things to keep in mind if you're just looking at futures markets. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I think people will start pushing for that too, especially when we get a little bit more a couple more data points. It's like, guys, this is what we really need to be focusing on. But I think that's a good point. USC potentially could get in 9 wins this season because of their schedule, and depending on how they look in the other games. Michigan, big change, big scandal involving the previous head coach. They kind of get lucky, Tyson, that Kyle Whittingham gets pushed out at Utah, and he falls right into their lap. Had an incredible tenure at Utah, 178-88, won Pac-12 titles, was competitive, getting them over to the Big 12. He brings Jason Beck in as the offensive coordinator. He brings Jay Hill in as the defensive coordinator. And I'm impressed with what they were able to retain. Now, it's not too surprising at Michigan, Tyson, because really, if you go to Michigan, you're kind of just committing to everything that's about Michigan. But 72.1% of their offensive yards are back, which is 5th in the country. 35.7% of their tackles are back, which is 76th in the country. 38 offensive line starts, which is 93rd in the country. But Michigan's a place where you can just kind of have talent. You backfill that offensive line, you get people going with NFL bodies. 6 returning offensive starters, which is 7th in the country. 6 returning offensive starters, 7 if you include their transfers. 4 defensive returning starters, 7 if you include their transfers. Second toughest schedule in the nation, according to Phil Steele. Tyson, there's a lot kind of going around about Michigan. I'm going to throw it to you, just wherever you want to attack, whether it's your boy Bryce Underwood, whether it's the Whittingham situation, whether it's the Sharon Moore thing, however you want to dive into Michigan.
I don't want to attack the Sharon Moore thing. I'd prefer to never speak about that probably again. That's something that I'm good on. I think there's 2 questions for me with Michigan. How quickly can Kyle Whittingham speed this thing up and say, all right, like, transition's over now, let's go win football games? Is that going to be this year, or is this a 2-year thing for Michigan to get back to competing for national championships? And then number 2, is Bryce Underwood going to take that step forward? Because this is a guy where if you follow the prep circuit at all, he's the prince who was promised. Like, Underwood is supposed to be the man, and it sure looks like he's got every tool to be that. And then they bring in some of these receivers, man. Like when JJ Buchanan or Jamie French, 2 Fs, shows up from Texas. Like those are big gets here for Michigan. So to me, those are the 2 questions. And unfortunately, I don't have any insight as far as like what Bryce Underwood's development is going to be, because how many times have we been burned from a kid who we just keep waiting. He keeps so close to scratching the surface. But I will say, if he smashes, Michigan can beat it.
So Bryce Underwood, to me, is the biggest question mark I have for Michigan. If he's good, if he lives up to his potential as a recruit coming out of high school, then Michigan's going to be really good. If not, I mean, Tyson, there's some rumblings that he's going to get benched maybe in the season. This is a new regime. I mean, that would be crazy, especially with all the NIL money that's promised to him.
Play for Baylor.
It is what it is. But Tyson, last year, this is as true freshman, mind you, 2,400 yards, 60% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 9 picks, less than 400 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. Again, going into the Big Ten as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, expecting to tear things up. That's just not realistic, really. But we were promised Cam Newton. Like, that's what people are saying. They're like, is this a souped-up Cam Newton? I mean, think about that. The guy who took over college football, went undefeated at Auburn, Heisman Trophy, national championship.
Time, dude.
Right, and they're like, oh, is this kid's a better version of that? It's like, okay, we'll see. Well, obviously, you and I pumped the brakes on that when we were talking about Bryce Underwood. But this is the season. If he going in your sophomore year, a quarterback-friendly offense under Jason Beck, if he can take the next step forward, we're probably going to look at Bryce Underwood going into his junior year as, okay, can this guy be 1-1 in the NFL draft? Can this guy get Michigan the next national championship? If not, we may be saying this kid's a bust. And that's just it. It is what it is, Tyson. It happens all the time in college football. Recruiting services get it wrong a lot of the times, and that could happen here with Bryce Underwood.
This is a $10 million investment.
All right, let's get into Penn State. So here's what's going to happen here. I'm just going to give out the stats. I'm going to throw it to Tyson. I want to hear his thoughts on everything, and then I'll kind of go through what I know and gather and gather leading into this preview episode throughout the offseason and all that stuff. So obviously, no James Franklin. He was fired during the season. Matt Campbell takes over. He's 72-55 at Iowa State, which is pretty crazy considering how disastrous that program is and has been before he arrived. 6.2% of the offensive yards are back. 131st in the country, 23.5% of their tackles back. That's 118th in the country. 51 offensive line starts are back, which is 71st in the country. Only 2 offensive returning starters. 9 if you include the transfer portal, 3 returning defensive starters, 8 if you include the transfer portal. Heavy transfer portal usage from Iowa State in different areas. Taylor Mauser, the offensive coordinator, Denton Lynn, the defensive coordinator, Rocco Beck, the QB. Tyson, I'm just going to throw it to you. What, like, leading into this, what did you make of Penn State coming in on paper?
So I hate when we do this because I know how this is going to go. I don't like when Brad and I are both incredibly in on one of our favorite teams. I think that this transition is going to be a lot quicker than what they're getting credit for, assuming the big question to me is, are the offensive and defensive lines going to mesh? Because I don't have concerns. It's not like Rocco Becht is walking in to a new system or something that he's not going to be familiar with, or Carson Hansen or Brahmer, Caleb Bacon on defense. Like, there is a lot here for Penn State. I think that Matt Campbell is positioned to start pretty fast here. And Brad, not for nothing, they miss Ohio State, they miss Indiana, they miss Oregon, they play USC at home, they play Indiana or Minnesota at home. Like, this is set up to me where James Franklin should have made the playoffs with this schedule, and I think Matt Campbell's a better coach. I don't know if Penn State's as talented here this year as they have been in years past, because some of these teams, when we talk about, like, when Brad gets fired up about Penn State underperforming, it's because the rosters deserve to be in the same discussion as some of these other giant programs, and we just don't talk about them that way because they're going to lose those games. This Penn State team is positioned, to me, to chase double digits and find themselves in the playoffs.
53rd toughest schedule according to Phil Steele.
Which is crazy in the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah. I mean, insane. The non-con Marshall at Temple Buffalo. You host Wisconsin at Northwestern for their stadium opening, which people are trying to prop up. Wow. I'm like, okay, I understand that Northwestern went into Penn State last year and won. On paper, the talent gap is huge, even with all the stuff we're going to get into with the transfers and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, you went through it with who they avoid, too. I mean, this is a gift of a schedule, especially for the first year of Matt Campbell. Couple things here to lead into it. Tyson is well aware, and I've made it very clear here, and I said what I said in our podcast, that Matt Campbell, I wasn't the biggest fan of at Iowa State, and I thought he was overrated as a head coach. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't think he was a good coach, Tyson. I just thought it was crazy that people were calling him like Bill Walsh or Bill Belichick, and it's like, can you give me a break on that? Can we pump the brakes? Now, Tyson, and I got my Penn State stuff on. I do it every time for the Big Ten. I got the Penn State in the background if you're watching on YouTube, of course. It's where I went to school, so obviously I'm going to have a little bit of homerism here. But this is right now is about as objective as I can be. What Matt Campbell did at Iowa State is actually insane. I mean, that program is a dumpster fire. If you go through like Football Reference and see that program before he arrived in Ames and what they turned into under him, it's pretty remarkable. And so this guy is a hell of a coach and a hell of a football coach, and he's about building culture. And that's what people are wondering. Can that work at a place like Penn State? Can you be cutthroat enough at a place like Penn State to beat a cutthroat Michigan, a cutthroat Ohio State, a cutthroat Oregon? Or is the family business model, that's just crushed by venture capitalism now? You know, like, is private equity just too big? You can't go.
We got enshittification in the Big Ten, dude.
So I think it's going to work for Matt Campbell here. This is the most talent he's ever seen. Tyson, he's raving about the people who stayed from Penn State and then transfer. He's like, oh my God, we got that guy at tackle. We got like this guy at linebacker. It's like, you're just going to recruit and have better players than you've ever had before, just by proxy of being at Penn State. Now, people are saying this is Iowa State East. Penn State is basically Iowa State. That's not true. Now, they brought in 40 transfers and 24 of them were from Iowa State. However, those are like the best players from Iowa State, right? Like, yeah. Matt Campbell and his staff scooped the top, and they're like, we're bringing the best that we got, and we're going to Penn State with it, and we're keeping the best that Penn State has. So it's a mesh of the rosters. They brought in their center. Everybody's like, well, he's from Texas State. Well, if I told you Alabama, Oregon, Georgia, and all these other blue bloods were going after a kid in the transfer portal, you'd be like, that kid's pretty good, probably. Well, that's what the case with Brock Reichard, their starting center. And then you kind of plug and play across the roster with holdovers from Penn State, the best from Iowa State, and then defensive tackles from UCLA who are monstrous 320-pounders that Penn State hasn't had even under the James Franklin era. So there are question marks for this team. Depth is an issue, but this is the most talented group on paper that Matt Campbell's had to work with, Tyson. I think that's exciting if you're going into this as a Penn State fan. Now, where people are going to push back, are those talented players from Iowa State going to be able to handle the Big Ten? I'm sorry, Tyson. Didn't Iowa State like 3 out of the last 4 years beat Iowa? It isn't. We always say Iowa wins because they're physical and just out physical teams, even in the Big Ten. So that argument's always a little bit funny to me, especially when we're talking about with Cignetti, and we didn't even mention this for Indiana. People are like, can Indiana still win without their James Madison transfers? Which is just hilarious because you never would have uttered those words previously before Indiana won with James Madison transfers. And you would have said before that Iowa State is definitely better than James Madison. So I just think it's funny how the goalposts always get moved in situations like this, however you want to frame things. And so all of that is to say, I think Penn State, I'm with you. This should be at least a 9-win season for them.
It has to.
10 wins, I think you're in the college football playoff. And if that's the case, this is a smash success for Penn State in the Matt Campbell era. Is it going to happen? I'm not sure. But I'm excited about Rocco Beck. People are going to point to what he did last year. 16 picks, 61% completion percentage. Tyson, he had 2 off-season shoulder surgeries, one for a torn labrum, one for a sprained AC joint. You're familiar with shoulder surgeries. They're not fun. They limit your mobility. This guy looks healthy. Signs are that he is lighting it up in camp. And I'm ready to rock and roll as a Penn State fan and see what this new era brings for Nittany Lions.
What does Rocco Beck have to do this season to put up the best quarterback season by a Penn State quarterback in the last 10 years?
Last 10 years. Let's see here. McSorley had some
Go
good
back
years.
to 16.
Yeah, McSorley had a good – I mean, man, they were good. That Rose Bowl year when they lost to USC, that was a pretty sick year. I don't know. But McSorley didn't quite have the passing numbers. So I think Beck, if he goes – I mean, obviously 4,000 yards would be a dream. But if he goes 4,000 yards, I think we're looking at this offense like, whoa, this might be the best we've seen in a long time.
I think some of these things are on the table. And I think that it's been a season where Penn State had a lot going on this offseason, and they kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit with some of the Lane Kiffin madness, and we had all the Sorsby drama and everything else. I think in a normal year, people are looking at Penn State through a different lens. Like I'm excited. I think you should be excited if you're a Nittany Lion fan. The flip side is every Big Ten fan listening to this right now, Brad, goes, hey, we've heard this story 100 times.
That is true, but that's something that they're saying on campus. Say like, "Hey, has nothing to do with us." I mean, we were at the coaches. We were the coaches. We got new players here, and one of them is Danton Lynn. I tease this. He's coming back to his alma mater. Was a standout at Penn State. The son of Anthony Lynn. Man, he's been incredible as defensive coordinator in his young career. I think he's going to do the same thing at State College. He's going to bring a pro-style defense here. Once big bodies on the edge and in the interior, I think Penn State fans are really going to like what they see from this defense this year. There's a lot of rave reviews about what's going on. So I'm excited, man. I'm ready. I'm ready for September 5th against Marshall and to kick this thing off. But let's keep it going. Let's go to our neck of the woods, or your neck of the woods now, my old neck of the woods in the Pacific Northwest with the Washington Huskies. And you want to talk about a strange offseason, Tyson. My God. I mean, their starting quarterback, Damon Williams, was like, see ya, I'm out of here. Oh, wait, I'm going to get sued. I'm coming back. And everybody's like, hey, everything's fine here, right? Damon Williams is back. Now, I could be facetious and say, oh, they're just saying that. Literally all reports and all accounts are everything's fine, water under the bridge, we're moving on. So I'm not going to sit here and say I know better than the people actually on campus covering the team or people in the locker room saying, no, it's actually fine. So I'm going to take them at word for it. Now, Tyson, if something goes south, maybe we'll revisit what happened in the offseason. But on paper, this Washington team's pretty good.
Oh, they're good enough to justify being here, and I think the betting odds show you that. Brad, my concern here is I think that this happens especially with Pacific Northwest teams, and you can push back at me, but this is just something I've seen over the course of my life. Like, Jonah Coleman was really good, and we're just talking about like, yeah, but they'll be able to replace Jonah Coleman, and they'll be able to replace Denzel Boston and guys like this. And I don't think it's that simple. Like I'm seeing a lot of things. Well, they've got what's his name, Quade Carr in the backfield here. Jaden Lamar. We've got Desmond Roebuck, who I think is going to be a good player. You got DeGraff at tight end. Like these are good players. It takes a little longer to replace some of these studs. Like. We've got reports from the Cleveland Browns that watching Denzel Boston in training camp was what they say like a spiritual experience or something like that.
He looks really good.
These dudes can play, and I think that it's a little tougher to replace some of these guys. Jed Fish's debut stunk in 2024. they were pretty good last year. And I think they surprised people there, especially on the defensive side of the football. But my concern with having them here in this tier, to be honest with you, is that they got to go to Autzen Stadium and play Oregon. They're not going to win that football game. We'll talk about Nebraska, but that's going to be a tough one to go visit. They got to go see USC. And then you catch Iowa, Indiana, Penn State at home. If this defense isn't in the same spot, those are bullies walking into your house. I think that this has potential to go a little sideways for Washington. I think on best case scenario, they beat everyone they're supposed to and maybe catch somebody they're not supposed to beat, but then we're still talking about 4 losses. And to me, I don't think that Washington's competing for a Big Ten championship as much as I would love it. I've been to Husky Stadium a number of times. My dad's a huge fan. I watch like every Washington game, all of the good stuff. This team isn't winning the Big Ten. This team isn't making the college football playoff.
9-4 last year, like you alluded to. This is the third season under Jed Fish. 15-11 record here. Ryan Walters, the defensive coordinator. If you remember, he was the defensive coordinator at Illinois, took the head job at Purdue, was clearly in over his head, but he is a hell of a defensive coordinator.
Yes.
Came here, replaced Steve Belichick, and he did a good job last year. We'll see what he can do this season. I agree with you that it's going to be hard to replace what they're missing last year, but 59.7% of their offensive yards are back, which is 30th in the country. 46.2% of their tackles are back, which is 47th in the country. 85 offensive line starts are back, which is 32nd in the country. I think that's notable for this offense. Kind of gives you a little bit of time to ease into things, see if you can find replacements for the stars that you had missing or who departed. 7 returning starters, 8 if you include their transfer portal haul on offense. 5 returning defensive starters, 6 if you include their transfer portal haul. And Tyson, you mentioned their schedule. Phil Steele believes it's the 44th toughest schedule. I think it's partly because they get some of those teams at home.
They play some
I'm with you. We'll see what happens.
Too, dude. They play some bad teams.
Let's move into the middle of the pack. And again, we think these teams probably, even if everything goes right, will not be able to compete for a conference title. And the first one in this tier for us that we're going to dive into is Iowa. Now, Kirk Ferentz, my oh my. This is going to be his 28th season here, man. He's got 213 wins. They went 9-4 last year. This guy just continues to do it. Tim Lester is OC. Phil Parker is DC. They're bringing in Hank Brown, the transfer from Auburn. 40.4% of the offensive yards are back, which is 60th in the country. 33.7% of their tackles are back, which is 88th in the country. Tyson, this is what popped out to me. 27 offensive line starts returning for Iowa? What? That's 113th in the nation. Just 5 of their returning starters on offense. All 5 are homegrown, of course. 3 returning defensive starters. 4 of them are homegrown. This team, I have no clue what to expect out of Iowa. I'll just tell you that right now. Actually, I do know what to expect. It's going to be probably boring offense, a physical grinded game, but I don't know if that means they're going to win 9 games or if it means they're going to finally bottom out and have a losing record.
I don't think that. I think that there's a reason that we start with Iowa here in the middle of the pack because this is the ultimate gatekeeper in all of college football where you have to be better than Iowa to prove that you can win a championship in this conference. And if you can't beat them, you're not competing. And I think that sometimes that's lost in college football anymore because it's all about national championships. Iowa puts out tons of pros. Guess what, Brad? Spoiler alert, they're probably going to have an All-American tight end again, or at least one of the better ones in the conference and the country here. I think Iowa is going to win 8 games. I don't care if it's Hecklinski at quarterback or do we have any updates on that battle? I don't know if I have old info here, but it was Hecklinski and Hank Brown kind of battling to replace Mark Gronowski. Look, I was going to score 17 points a game. They're going to allow 13, and they're going to win enough games, and they're going to piss everyone off that watches them, and they're fine with that. And they're going to beat somebody they're probably not supposed to, and the games will be boring, and they'll be gross and muddy, and they play at 10 a.m., and they're going to catch some crazy kickoffs, and it's beautiful football. Like, what else do you want from this program?
Well, somebody they're hoping to help them score more than 17 points is LJ Phillips, who's transferring from South Dakota, who I'm sure that you would know from the FCS level, Tyson. 1,900 yards last year, 19 touchdowns. He's going to be behind Kamari Moulton, who went 878 and 5 touchdowns last year for Iowa. Was, these guys just poor running backs, and they got a good one, I think, from the FCS level. And LJ Phillips, so keep an eye on him this season too. Let's move on to Wisconsin and a guy who is on the scalding hot seat in Luke Fickell. We went over that in our hot seat episode because he's going into his 4th season, Fickell is. 17-21. They went 4-8 last year in a massive disappointment of a season. Colton Joseph, they bring it in as quarterback, coming in from Old Dominion, 2,600 yards, 60% completion percentage, 21 touchdowns, 10 picks last year, and people are supposed to get excited about that. This has a recipe for disaster written all over the season, Tyson. Just 42.8% of their offensive yards are back, which is 58th in the country. 35.6% of their tackles are back, which is 78th in the country. Just 35 offensive line starts at Wisconsin, which is 97th in the country. 3 offensive returning starters, 6 if you include their transfers, 3 returning defensive starters, 5 if you include their transfers, and the 32nd toughest schedule in the country, according to Phil Steele, which, man, I mean, with Luke Fickell needs to win this season, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, and to be perfectly frank, I think that the only reason that we're comfortable with them here in the middle of the pack is because they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Indiana, they don't play Oregon, they don't play Michigan. This is a 6-win football team, brother. I don't care how you slice it. Like, to me, this is not look, you're supposed to go into Camp Randall and be intimidated by what they're going to do. This isn't an offense that isn't going to scare people. I don't think it's a defense that's going to scare you. And I think that this is a team that let's go play in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
6.5 is our win total on FanDuel, -114 to the over, -106 to the under. It's a coin flip according to the book.
How telling is that, man?
Dude, does 6, and you said go to a ReliaQuest Bowl, 6 wins. That doesn't save Luke Fickell's job, does it?
No, it can't. It simply can't, especially not with the money being put in and the fact that the people that, originally signed him to cut his checks, they're not there anymore.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to UCLA, because we went from the hot seat situation to somebody who, man, I mean, sounds like what Bob Chesney's doing here at UCLA in Bel Air is getting people going, because he comes over from James Madison. And you want to talk about Cignetti leaving James Madison and going and doing what he did at Indiana. Well, how about having to replace him and the success he had? Well, Chesney just went 21-6, went to the CFP. This guy's a star, was a star at Holy Cross. Nico Iamaleava stays at quarterback, didn't have a great season last year. Wayne Knight, though, UCLA brings over from James Madison, who went for 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns last year. They keep Mikey Matthews out on the edge. 61.7% of the offensive yards are back, which is 25th in the country. 35.7% of the tackles are back, which is 77th in the country. 125 offensive line starts are back for UCLA, which is 5th in the country. And I think that is huge for this program. 4 returning offensive starters, 10 if you include their portal haul. 3 defensive returning starters, 8 if you include their portal haul. But the only cold water here on this situation is that they have the 29th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele.
Well, I put a little bit more cold water, and that, like, I gave Indiana big ups. UCLA is revamping their offensive line with a little bit of there's a different caliber to these guys, and so if they stumble on offense there, I think that's the first place to look. Second would be that Nico never turned into the guy that any of us thought he was going to be. This dude was getting Instagram posts at 17, all of this crazy stuff, and he's just never. It was close for a year at Tennessee, and then it was like, yeah, I don't think this dude has it. And I still don't think he has it. I think Chesney's a heck of a football coach, and I think that if anyone's going to get UCLA to a point where they're competing week in and week out in the Big Ten, he's the man for the job. I don't believe that starts this year. That said, I think UCLA makes a bowl game, and I think that's should be good enough, man, to start it off.
6.5 is their win total, juice a little bit to the under on FanDuel. If this team goes to a bowl game, that's a huge success. Tyson, the coffers are open in Bel Air. People were saying this athletic department was broke. Remember that? People were like, UCLA can't compete in the modern era. Nobody wants to pay. They don't have boosters. Well, those rich people in Bel Air were like, how much money do you need for this good-looking cat come over from the East Coast to start running our football program? Because they are recruiting at a high level. They started attacking the transfer portal at a high level. They retained at a high level, which isn't very hard, folks. It's UCLA. Great education. And what a gorgeous campus for multiple reasons. So I think this is the guy to get things going here at UCLA. Bob Chesney seems like a home run. However, this is also the biggest job that he's had, Tyson. We'll see what happens. It is a tough job at UCLA. Everything looks great right now. We'll see if that can continue to go. But I think if you win 6 games, like you're pointing to, the arrow is massively up for UCLA. All right. Let's keep things cruising along here with Illinois. Very, very interesting situation, and somebody that hits home here for both of us as when it comes to their coaching staff. But we'll take it here Obviously, this is Brett Bielema. He's done a hell of a job here. This is his 6th season, which I can't believe that's actually the case. 37-26. They went 9-4 last year, but they have a little bit of a changing of the guard per se, because Katon Hauser has taken over as the quarterback, replacing Luke Altmaier. Had a good season at East Carolina last year. 3,300 yards, 66% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Was originally at Michigan State, so he's returning to the Big Ten. Khalil Valentine, Caden Fagan returning and staying as running backs as the holdovers. They both combined for about 1,100 yards with 11 touchdowns. 36.2% of their offensive yards are back, which is 70th in the country. 32.2% of their tackles back, which is 93rd in the country. 70 offensive line starts return, which is 43rd in the country. 4 offensive returning starters, which 8 if you include their transfers. 4 returning defensive starters. All 4 of them are homegrown. However, Tyson, the big thing for you and I are that they have a new defensive coordinator. And who would that be? Oh, as I set him up here, Tyson, his internet connection crapped out, or our mind crapped out. We've both been dealing with storms in the area here, so we apologize for that. But it's Bobby Hauck, guy who is the head coach at the University of Montana. Tyson still lives, used to work for the University of Montana, so we know Bobby Hauck exceptionally well from during his time in his second tenure, or his 2 tenures, I should say, at the University of Montana as the head coach there. Now, he bolts. Tyson will have some more details about that. But it's interesting to see old Bobby Hauck popping up as the defensive coordinator. Tyson, I was queuing you up for it, and literally right as I threw it to you, either your internet or my internet, as we're dealing with these storms here, just crapped out. But I just said, so this is a guy, Bobby Hauck, who we both know well, both his tenures at Montana. But what happened to lead him to taking this job in a pretty shocking fashion?
So I have a crazy storm outside my window right now, and this is the football gods telling me to watch my mouth here when I talk about Bobby. And I think that's fair. He did a ton for the program, and the way it ended was the way it ended. If you want to look that up, go for it. But I will say this: playing a 3-3-5 in the Big Ten is going to get you shelled. And I like it. Yeah, the returning secondary has some really good pieces on it, like Xavier Scott. He's coming back from injury. He's going to be awesome. The secondary is going to be a strength, but you lose Gabe Jackus in the middle, and that's going to be scary, because when you go play Indiana and you play Ohio State and some of the other schools, you blitz as much as you want. We'll take our 5. And I think that was the issue that Bobby Hauck ran into at the University of Montana, was just getting bullied in the trenches. And look, Illinois is coming off the best 2-year stretch in the history of the program. Do not get that twisted. I think Bielema gets a lot of credit, but a lot of people point and laugh at him too. Like, oh, look at this guy. Like, these teams will never be good. Luke Altmaier was never as good as people made him out to be. I think there were some really good coaching jobs that was done here at Illinois over the last couple of years. This defense won't be good enough. And I think that Illinois is – look, I think it's an improvement, to be perfectly honest, in the stature of Illinois football, that we are perfectly comfortable with them being a middle-of-the-pack team. But I don't think that this is going – the addition of Bobby Hauck to run your defense doesn't push you over the top. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that they should be down here with Purdue just because of my personal feelings on the way the relationship ended with the University of Montana. I am intrigued, I think, by Katon Hauser coming in here and playing at a little bit of a higher level. This is somebody that you know well, just based off of the amount of East Carolina football that is consumed. I think the offense has potential to be more fun than it was a year ago. That's a win.
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens there. He flamed out at Michigan State, went to East Carolina, bounced back. We'll see if he can make the leap. 6.5 is the win total, juiced over at -152. So this program is definitely in good hands under Brett Bielema. And I will say, Tyson, he's done a good job with hiring coordinators. We'll see if that happens with Bobby at the defensive coordinator. I know some people listen to this. If you're an Illinois fan, you're like, well, we're excited about Bobby Hauck, and you're going to kind of point to some of the numbers. The glass half full angles, Brett Bielema has shown he knows what he's doing when he's hiring coordinators. We'll see if that translates here. But Illinois, interesting team. We know this. They're going to be physical. You're going to have to beat Illinois if you want to win that football game. And that's a lot of that is credit to Brett Bielema and how he's presented this program under his leadership. So let's keep things rolling along here and go to Minnesota. And a guy, Tyson, kind of goofy, in PJ Fleck. This is 10th season here, which is unbelievable. It feels just like yesterday that he was coaching in the MAC. He is 66-44 here. Incredibly successful tenure. They go 8-5 last season, 5-4 in conference. Has kind of flirted with the top of the Big Ten for a little bit, and has fallen back. And I think this is just a reality of the modern era of football with NIL and recruiting, and it's just tough to win at a place like Minnesota with all the disadvantages you have. But with that said, Drake Lindsay returns. There's a lot of excitement around this guy after what he did last season as a freshman. 2,300 yards, 63% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns, 6 picks. I listened to him at Big Ten Media Days. Kid's impressive. I mean, kid is pretty impressive. He was. Darius Taylor back as running back. This defense looks awesome. 54.1% of their tackles are back, which is 17th in the country. 69.8% of their offensive yards are back, which is 12th in the country. 66 offensive line starts are back, which is 46 in the country. Tyson, 7 offensive returning starters, all homegrown. 6 returning defensive starters, all homegrown. 31st toughest schedule in the country. I think Minnesota could be a little sleeper here. And I know we put them in the middle of the pack. It's because their top end, I don't think that they can win the Big Ten, but they could certainly be the best team in the middle of the pack.
Well, we've seen, I mean, we give other coaches and other conferences credit, and I've been guilty of hating on PJ Fleck a time or two in my life, but won 8 games 4 of the last 5 years. Like, maybe that should be the middle of the pack tier for the Big Ten here, is we're just naming all the programs that are consistent, and we know what we're getting. And I think that Minnesota is a good example of that. There's some reason for optimism for sure on this offensive side of the ball. The defense was bad a year ago, but I think that everyone in the country, if you don't know Anthony Smith at defensive end, you're going to. There's a guy who led the Big Ten in sacks. Get used to hearing his name a lot this season. Get used to hearing his name. This looks like a guy to me that could play in the league for a long time. And I think that that's if you're just going to tune into a random Minnesota game, he will pop off the screen.
No doubt about that. Let's close here with Nebraska. This is going to be the 4th season under Matt.
You feel good about them being here?
Yeah, dude, I don't think this team's very good. We'll dive into it. They're 7-6 last year. Tyson, they used to be, hey, it's Matt Rule bump. A couple seasons in, bang, goes to the next level. Well, we were expecting that last year for Nebraska. Didn't quite happen. They had a disappointing year, especially with the soft schedule. Dylan Raiola takes a hike. They bring in Anthony Calandria, who had a nice little, quarterback rehab stint at UNLV.
Who's calling the plays?
Oh, that'd be your boy Dana Holgerson, who it hasn't quite worked here in Nebraska. Didn't quite work at the end of his tenure at West Virginia. Anthony Calandria now away from the Dan Mullen quarterback rehab situation. We'll see what happens on that front as he takes a step back up into real competition in the Big Ten. 44.5% of their offensive yards are back, which is 56th. 58.1% of their tackles are back, which is 11th, which I think is big positive. 124 offensive line starts are back, which is 6th. And you can look at it 2 ways. Hey, it's great. We finally have a good offensive line. Or like, oh my God, these guys stink. And they're all back. That's not great. 5 offensive returning starters, 9 if you include their transfers, 6 returning defensive starters, 7 if you include their transfers. But they have the 26th toughest schedule. And this season could go one of 2 ways for Nebraska, and I'm leaning towards it being a little bit on the tougher end of the spectrum.
I mean, look at the schedule. We could point out 6 losses right now: Oregon, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio State, Washington, Indiana. Like, you want to be in the top 25? And we didn't even mention the fact that Emmett Johnson's no longer there. He was the do-it-all guy. Like, when you name the percentage that's gone, like, you can chalk some of that up to Raiola for sure. Emmett Johnson was 1,500 yards, and he was like, if we need a first down, I got it. Like, just give me the ball. That's a pretty massive hole to fill. I'm done doing this with Nebraska. Like, Nebraska to me is on the they're not on the same level of a program as a Colorado, because Nebraska will be better, I think, this season than Colorado will be. But I'm not talking about him anymore. Matt Rule, it's done. And you can pay him. You can keep extending his contract and paying him more and more money. This team isn't getting to the top 25 this season. I'm very confident in that.
Let's move into the bottom feeder section, and we're going to start with Northwestern. And a lot of that has to do with the respect that we have for their head coach, David Braun, who's been awesome. 19-19. He's going into his 4th season. They were 7-6 last year, smashed their win total expectation. Chip Kelly coming in as the offensive coordinator. That is something to keep an eye on. Aiden Childs, they bring in from Michigan State, who is supposed to be like the next guy. Remember when he first started at Oregon State? It was like, wow, this is awesome. Griffin Wild, they retain at wide receiver, which is huge. 71 catches, 880 yards, 8 touchdowns. They got some good weapons. 53.9% of their offensive yards are back. That's 38th in the country. 56.3% of their tackles are back. That's 14th in the country. 43 offensive line starts return. That's 80th in the country. 5 returning offensive starters. 7 include their transfer portal haul. 6 returning defensive starters, all of them homegrown. Unfortunately for Northwestern, they have the 14th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele.
Yeah, and it might even be a little more than that. Like, I know we keep harping on it, but they got to go on the road to Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. That's our whole contender tier. That's tough. And then, like, yeah, you get Penn State in your stadium opening. That's not the easiest. Like, I'm sure you'd rather play Monmouth, right?
Yeah,
they got to play Iowa at home too. I have no. You say 6 starters back. I don't have much concern with the defense because I think last year was a pretty good indicator of this is what we do here under David Braun. Like, this is what we're going to do. Teams aren't going to score. Northwestern had a positive point differential a year ago, which is crazy to think about. But the offense was the huge problem. And hopefully for them, Chip Kelly can get things going. Aiden Childs can turn into the guy that we kind of thought he was going to be a couple years ago at this point. But it's just you can't look at that schedule and go, Northwestern's making a bowl game. It's a little unfair this season.
I can't believe you didn't mention and lead with the fact that they opened with South Dakota State. I thought for sure that you'd be chomping at the bit.
It's just, yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have fought you on South Dakota State's going to win this game by 15. Now I don't know.
Yeah, the FCS has been plundered. That is for sure. Let's move on to Maryland, and we did a little bit of the Mike Locksley conversation on the hot seat episode.
God, I hope
this is 8th season, 37-49. We'll see what happens here. But how about this, Tyson? Do you want to feel old? The offensive coordinator for Maryland now is Clint Trickett. How about that, man? Whoa, is our facial hair getting a little gray? My goodness gracious! They went 4-8 last year. Maryland did. They started off strong, faded once again, 1-8 in conference once again, but Malik Washington is back, coming off a great, in my opinion, freshman season. The stats may not tell you that, but about 3,000 passing yards, 58% completion percentage with a ton of drops. An FBS leading amount of drops. 17 touchdowns, 9 picks, added 4 more scores on the ground. 68.3% of their offensive yards are back, which is 15th in the country. 74.6% of their tackles are back, which is 3rd in the country. 91 offensive line starts returned, which is 24th in the country. 6 returning offensive starters, 8 if you include their transfers. 8 defensive returning starters, all of them homegrown with the 39th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. Tyson, Mike Locksley needs a big season. This is kind of low-key shaping up to be one potentially for him at Maryland.
Yeah, I think it's more than just Malik Washington as like a rising sophomore or somebody who you can look at and expect to take a step forward, because you could do the same thing with Sidney Stewart or Zahir Mathis on the line. That's Lockley's deal, man. It's like, this dude's going to get studs. Zion Ely is supposed to be a stud, and he's supposed to come in and be a good linebacker. They have Daniel Wingate on the second level, who is an all Big Ten candidate. And Brad, for the first time in the entirety of this Big Ten show, we finally get to talk about some swing games, because Maryland's one of the only schools on this list where you can look at this and go, man, they've got a couple that could go either way. As far as this team has to make a bowl, in my mind, for Mike Locksley to keep his job here. And when you got Virginia Tech, UCLA, Rutgers, Wisconsin, you go 4-0 in that stretch, or 3-1. Maryland's making a bowl game. They go 1-3 or 0-4. Mike Locksley's on TV next year.
Yeah, and Zahir Mathis, unfortunately, Tyson, I meant to mention this.
Yes. Oh, no.
It says season-ending non-contact. I don't know. I think it's ACL. So it could be Achilles, though. I'm trying to find some stuff. But this that Penn State was after for a while. He's committed to Ohio State. That flamed out. So he's like, I'm going to go to Maryland. Well, he had a great freshman season, so it's just tough to see. You just hate that type of stuff. We talked about it with Syracuse. Calvin Russell, supposed to be like the star freshman, the wide receiver, and unfortunately he tore his Achilles. So you just hate to see it. This is what happens with football, though, unfortunately. Let's move along to Purdue. Okay. We were surprised when Barry Odom took this job in the first place, Tyson. We're like, that makes almost zero sense. They went 2-10 last year, 0-9 in conference. It looks like this program just continues to be left behind in the Big Ten. They do get Ryan Brown back at quarterback. He's going to his junior season, but he had 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. What? 2,100 yards, just starting quarterback in the Big Ten. Now they bring in, or they get back Fami Ijaboy, 48.6% of their offensive yards back, 45 for just 45th in the country, 35.4% of their tackles are back, which is 79th in the country, 56 offensive line starts return, which is 64th in the country, just 3 returning offensive starters, 5 if you include the transfer portal, 4 returning defensive starters, 6 to include the transfer portal. But the 9th toughest schedule for Purdue, which just seems unfair. I don't even know how to take things, how to even discuss Purdue at this stage.
I'll do it for you. This is the only question that I have on Purdue, and it's one that's been eating at me for like 2 weeks since we kind of laid out the schedule that we're going to do. Can Purdue both take a step forward this season and still finish last in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think that's possible.
And I think that's what's going to happen. I think that they might look better and they could still finish 18th in the Big Ten. This is not a very easy schedule for the Purdue Boilermakers. There's not many places to find wins here, but they can be more competitive in games, and they can certainly get this offense to a point where we just got to score 3 touchdowns a week, and we're doing better than we were a year ago.
If Purdue looks better than they did last year, is Barry Odom looking for a different job? I mean, like, does he try to use that to bolt to a different job, and Purdue's looking for a new coach?
Do you think this whole thing was like this kid? You couldn't have gone to Purdue as a stepping stone spot. I just don't. I don't see it.
I don't either. But I mean, I don't know why you would leave UNLV to go to Purdue. I mean, I guess it's a Big Ten job, but my God, is that really? It's not the end of the career.
Maybe
job,
he thought it was a basketball job. Maybe he thought he was walking into like Zach Edey and Jaden Ivey, and he's like, "Heck
yeah, he might have." Let's get to Rutgers here, and if we're doing an order, for sure, Rutgers I think is going to be better than the Purdue this year. We just happen to do it this way. Greg Schiano going to his 7th season. He's 31-41 in his second stint here as the leader of Rutgers. They went 5-7 last year, went 2-7 in conference. Kirk Soraka is still the offensive coordinator here, which they've started to have some fun offenses. I think that's something you would look forward to if you're Rutgers. The defense still a work in progress, which is strange to say under Greg Schiano, but they bring in Dylan Longren from Boston College. Didn't really have an impressive season last year, but we'll see if it can work at Rutgers. They really did a good job with Ethan Kaliak-Manis. So we'll see if Soraka can work his magic there. They retain KJ Duff, which might be the biggest upset in all of college sports in the offseason. In fact, this guy stayed at Rutgers. 60 catches last year, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. The guy looks like a day 1 NFL draft pick. The guy I think is going to be a day 1 NFL draft pick. He's that talented, that big, that strong, that fast. 46.1% of the offensive yards are back, which is 52nd in the country. 31.8% of their tackles are back, which is 95th in the country. 84 offensive line starts are back, which is 33rd in the country. 5 returning offensive starters, all of them homegrown. 4 returning defensive starters, 8 if you include the transfer portal. The 36th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele, which is a break for Rutgers because normally they get pounded over the head with their schedule.
It is true. I think the biggest thing for me on Rutgers is Travis Johansson coming in to coach this defense. South Dakota led a pretty awesome resurgence to that program because, Brad, this defense was horrible last year. They were worse in the Big Ten in rush defense, which, by the way, if you've not watched college football in the last 45 years, if you can't stop the run in the Big Ten, you have no shot of doing anything of note within the conference. And they also allowed like 36 or 37 points a game. I lost the notes that were in front of me. But that's the question mark is, look, we were kind of a little higher on Rutgers than we should have been a year ago because it was like the offense takes a step forward and Schiano gets his defense going. They're going to surprise people. And the offense took a little step forward and the defense was the worst in the conference almost.
Yeah.
And so there's nowhere to go but up there. But again, don't fool yourself. Rutgers isn't going bowling, I don't think, this season.
I don't think so either. Let's close here because this is a welcome back to Pat Fitzgerald as he takes over at Michigan State. And it will be extremely interesting to see how he does. I mean, 110-101 at Northwestern during his tenure. That is a hell of a run. And he had him in the Big Ten title game at one point. I mean, just crazy stuff. They retain Alessio Milihovic, excuse me. You kind of took over after Aiden Childs got banged up or got benched or whatever the case may be. He looked okay, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 4 starts, but played 10 games, 1,200 yards, all that stuff. They get Cam Edwards in from UConn, 1,240 yards, 15 touchdowns there. 30.8% of the offensive yards are back. That's 80th in the country. 25.3% of the tackles are back. That's 115th in the country. 71 offensive line starts. are back, which is 41st in the country. Just 1 offensive returning starter. 6, though, if you include their transfers. 4 defensive returning starters. 6 if you include their transfers. Unfortunately for them, and unfortunately for Pat Fitzgerald, the 7th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele.
When you ran through Pat Fitzgerald's record and we're like, wow, can you believe that at a program like that? Well, all he did was come in here and start recruiting his ass off when he got to Michigan State. You mentioned Cam Edwards. Dude, Carson Golker got offers, the tight end, utility back, do-it-all guy from Ferris State. He had offers from LSU and a bunch of other giant programs in the country, and he chose Pat Fitzgerald in Michigan State. You go get Trent Fraley from North Dakota State, who's a dog, and that's another guy. That's what Pat Fitzgerald does. Is I'm just going to go pick at some of these guys. And granted, they had to replace 10 starters on the offense or whatever it is. So there was a lot for him to do. I'm excited. Like, I don't want to get into any of the other stuff with Pat Fitzgerald, but I think that it's just going to soothe my brain to like look at a Big Ten sideline and go, oh, yeah, nice.
So I'm excited that Pat Fitzgerald is back coaching. I think that he's going to get this program at least whipped into shape. Now, is that going to result in success, Tyson? I'm not sure because I don't know if there's no success to be had at Michigan State. Now, he's talking at the Big Ten Media Days, and he did not mince words. He said when he first showed up, there were players with hats, earphones in, the hoods up, and he's like, take that shit off right now.
I'm going to start hazing
Make eye contact. That's
what he said.
Make eye contact or else you guys can get out of my program. And he's like, this is how we're doing things. I'm like, that's Pat Fitzgerald, all right.
Yep.
The thing is, Tyson, they went 7-2 in that 2020 COVID year, and everybody's like, wow, that was incredible. You know, it goes to the title game. It's still East-West at that point. After that, 3-9 at Northwestern, 1-11 in 2022. Take out the 2020 season from 2019 to 2022. They had 3 Big Ten wins.
Big Ten. Yep.
So I think this looks great on paper, more so than the reality of it. There's a chance that the game just might have passed Pat Fitzgerald by, but it's still awesome that he's freaking back in the Big Ten.
I mean, it's going to be unlimited sound bites for us.
All right, let's close here. This is a long preview. Let's circle everything back if you're still listening at this point. I think Oregon is not going to win the Big Ten, but they're going to win the national championship this year. I don't think they're going to do the double. I don't think they're going to go Big Ten champs and national championships. I think Ohio State wins the Big Ten. Oregon wins the national championship. That is my prediction here for the Big Ten.
I think Oregon wins the Big Ten, and I do not think the Big Ten wins the national championship.
Love that. Love that. Tyson, think this goes back to the SEC, or are you thinking Notre Dame?
It's hard for me to look at this Georgia roster right now and just say Kirby Smart's not winning.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Let's get out of here. Like, subscribe, and share. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button on the way out. If you're listening to podcast form, 5 stars if you haven't already. It really does help us out, especially leading into the football season. It helps us become more discoverable, helps us grow our audience, and we do really appreciate all the support you guys have given us. Subscribe so you don't miss a single thing we do. Again, now that it's football season, we're going to have a lot of content coming for you left and right. And, of course, share it with a friend, with your family, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your sister, your brother, all that good stuff. As we are done with our conference previews, we're going to start turning the attention to the NFL divisions. And, by the way, we got week 0 right around the corner. We're going to get our gambling episodes fired back up. So we will talk to you all when we talk to you. Until then, guys, peace.